We dismiss history at our peril.
Liberty Nation Radio with Mark Angelides.
Welcome back to the show. And now we have a special signature Say What extravaganza with longtime host of this here Liberty Nation radio show, Mr. Tim Donna. Let's hear what the chattering classes are chatting about. Over to you, Tim.
Okay, thanks, Mark. And as we launch the spring into spring edition of Say What, all eyes are on the 46th President of the United States. We pray Joe Biden will act with wisdom, honor, and courage in response to Vladimir Putin's barbaric invasion of Ukraine. But the signs are hardly promising. In fact, this president is playing into the worst stereotype of himself, ad-libbing lines that have to be immediately walked back. In fact, a trio of gaffes as we reach the first month of the war in Ukraine has set everyone on edge, even as he later denied saying what he said or meaning what he said.
If chemical weapons were used in Ukraine, would that trigger a military response from NATO?
It would trigger a response in kind.
Look at how they're stepping up. Look at how they're stepping up. And you're going to see when you're there, and some of you have been there.
We will have a different future, a brighter future, rooted in democracy and principle, hope and light, of decency and dignity, of freedom and possibilities. For God's sake, this man cannot remain in power. I'm not walking anything back. The fact of the matter is I was expressing the more outrage I felt toward the way Putin is dealing and the actions of this man, just brutality.
Are you worried that other leaders in the world are going to start to doubt that America is back if some of these big things that you say on the world stage keep getting walked back?
What's getting walked back?
It made it sound like, just in the last couple days, it sounded like you told U.S. troops they were going to Ukraine. It sounded like you said it was possible the U.S. would use a chemical weapon, and it sounded like you were calling for regime change in Russia, and we know
none of the three occurred.
None of the three occurred?
None of the three.
So this president thinks he can simply deny saying what hundreds of millions of people actually saw him say. Only a politician. And the biggest political beneficiary of the disaster that has been this presidency is, of course, the non-politician who preceded Joe Biden.
You could take the 5 worst presidents in American history and put them together, and they would not have done the damage Joe Biden has done in just 15 months. In just over a year, he has managed to literally kill the American dream.
That's Trump at a rally in Georgia, and a poll shortly thereafter from Harvard-Harris shows Trump defeating Biden 47% to 41%. And perhaps the only good news for this president is that while he trails Trump by 6 points, his vice president, who was supposed to be lined up to run on her own in 2024, trails by 11 points. But before we get to 2024, here come the midterm elections this November, with Republicans poised to make enormous gains, not through anything they've done, but because of how toxic the Democratic Party brand has become. The GOP might take control of the Senate, but they almost certainly will gain the majority in the House. And the third-ranking House Republican, Elise Stefanik, promises that when they do, they will blow the doors off the scandal surrounding Hunter Biden that was suppressed by elite media during the presidential campaign.
Big tech colluded with the mainstream media to censor this story. We've always known the laptop is real, but we're going to hold this administration accountable, hold the president and his family accountable. Hunter Biden's investments in the Chinese Communist Party. Potential pay-to-play and corruption and criminal issues when you have Russian oligarchs funneling millions of dollars to Biden family businesses. Joe Biden's meeting when he was sitting vice president with shady characters. And the big guy. We know the big guy is Joe Biden. We need to have Hunter Biden under oath. If he won't testify, he needs to be subpoenaed.
Well, she certainly sounds serious about this, doesn't she? But the Republican who's making the most noise and the biggest splash right now is the governor of Florida, Ron DeSantis, who seems destined to run for president one of these days and is behaving as such. recently signing into law a ban on public schools teaching very young children about sex, which is somehow a controversial idea these days. The left has derided the bill as the so-called "don't say gay" law. But DeSantis proudly spoke of the reasons for it, both general and specific.
We have seen curriculum embedded for very, very young children, classroom materials about sexuality and woke gender ideology. We've seen libraries that have clearly inappropriate pornographic materials for very young kids. And we've seen services that were given to students without the consent or even knowledge of their parents across the country. Martin County had a gender transition plan that can be implemented without the parents' consent. In Florida and other places, school for very young kids, the genderbread man. So this is trying to sow doubt about kids, about their gender identity.
Indeed, that is the agenda of the progressive movement. Emasculate the country, tear down traditional notions of male and female. Google lists 72 separate gender identities. 72. And one of the places most enthusiastic to promote gender fluidity, of course, is Hollywood, which got a black eye of mammoth proportions, larger than even the one Chris Rock likely got after the slap heard around the world by Will Smith. And their colleague Jim Carrey went into deep lament about Smith getting a standing O after that and the lost glamour of his industry.
You do not have the right to walk up on stage and smack somebody in the face because they said words. I was sickened. I was sickened by the standing ovation. I felt like Hollywood is just spineless, en masse. And it really felt like, oh, this is a really clear indication that we're not the cool club anymore.
Indeed, for Hollywood, the thrill is gone. Many would say long gone. Mark, back to you.
Yep, it seems the glory days of the silver screen are certainly in the rear-view mirror, and some would say good riddance and goodbye to that particular brand of wokeness masquerading as empathy. Tim Donner, thanks for being here. Really, as always, it's been an absolute pleasure. We dismiss history at our peril.
Liberty Nation Radio with Mark Angelides.
We're doing it for real, really real. Liberty Nation.
And Jeff Charles, contributor for LibertyNation.com.
I think we're starting to make an impact. Liberty style, fight for freedom.
The tracking poll sponsored by Liberty Nation for Thursday.
Mentioned by Dan Bongino, Rasmussen, Jordan Peterson, and others.
I can do it again if you want me to.
Cited in Mark Levin's American Marxism.
I think we're starting to make a really big impact. Getting noticed. We're doing it. Rock on. I'm gone.